Good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock. A quorum is present. So the November Board of Health meeting is now open. I would just like to remind you all that this meeting is being audio and video recorded. Do we have any public comments on any issues that are not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 3, review of the minutes for September. I have some questions. On the second page, after Arthur Reed, it says McNabb. I know he is. We have regulations about notification systems where there is town water. Those apply here. What did I mean?
I wasn't at that meeting.
Would you say that again?
It says we have we're talking about 9 North Road, and I apparently said we have regulations about notification systems where there is town water. Those apply here.
I don't know what you're talking about there. I think maybe there might have been a typo.
Yeah, I don't know what notification systems. We're talking about areas where there's town water, and we have rules in some case for septic systems. Do they apply at 9 North Road?
With town water, the nitrogen sensitivity of that area would not be recognized because it's in
Right.
nitrogen sensitive areas. All I can say.
So I don't know. We have regulations. There's something wrong here. We have regulations about, it should say we have regulations about town water in nitrogen sensitive areas, but they would not apply here. That makes more sense. That's at least what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a follow-up we're talking about the animal enforcement agent.
Mm-hmm.
I asked about whether we'd contacted the animal or the Ag Commission about this, so they weren't wandering on.
Yes, we did.
They know we're doing this.
Yes.
So if they want to do other regulations, that's their business. But as far as roosters,
Correct. I did notify them via
Good.
email.
the question now: does the public know this? There was an article in the newspaper.
I hadn't seen.
No,
the
I
article in the
mean
newspaper.
back after several months ago.
So right now, with the public hasn't been officially notified over the about the setting them up as agents because I'm still working with Lieutenant McVicker on the procedure.
Okay.
Once the procedure is set up, we'll be able
Right,
to.
because then people know what to do.
Then we'll.
Because we've kind of had this hiatus since we talked about it.
Mm-hmm. So I've spoken to Angus McVicker. He is working out a procedure, and I will follow up with him tomorrow.
Are there any other comments from the board on the minutes? Other than that, one sentence that needs correction, then the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Now, this is really exciting here. Review of unapproved minutes from November 2011.
So yes, last week I was informed that there were 3 sets of minutes that had not been voted on from 2011. We can vote to retroactively approve them so that we can get them into
Fortunately, the 4 of us that are here today were also at those meetings. And I read over those minutes. Did anyone have any comments on those November minutes? No additions. So those are also approved by unanimous consent. Number 5, pool. Just aside, yes, we learned a lot from our course we took. I think that minutes in the future need a little more information instead of just pool regulations, lifeguard discussion, maybe just one sentence.
Oh, for the agendas.
On the agenda about. So the idea is someone reading the agenda knows what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be at great detail. Oh, well, I'm thinking of that. The other thing, Terry, we have to have all the documentations attached to the minutes when you post them?
No,
That's what.
It references the documentation that was used,
Okay.
but they aren't.
But
I'll
do we?
double check on it, but I don't think they have
But do we?
physically attached.
Do we specifically? You sometimes will say, documents. But do we have to specifically list what documents? Not attach them.
That has to be clearer. Yeah, that I am working on fixing to come into. It's hard from where I am because I don't see packets to know what you're actually using at the page.
So in the future, what we'll have is, we don't have to have the documents attached. That's right. We just have to have as more.
At the table you referred to a site plan. You referred to at the table what is used at the site plan, a reference to regulations, a report by some scientist, that kind of thing.
Right.
Is what
So that will
needs to be in the documentation.
That will be in the future.
And I'm working on getting this to be a little more in keeping with that. But like I said, it's hard because I don't see the packets and I don't know all the time what it is you are looking at specifically.
So, but then after each meeting, you'll have to find that and list them. Okay, I'm sorry for the. Let's go back to pool regulations.
Yes. So I was recently approached by a few of the lodging areas here in Nantucket about the lifeguard requirement here in Nantucket. Right now, the board has a policy to require lifeguards at all times that the pool is open. The Nantucket lodging groups have approached me to say having the lifeguards with the specific certification set up in the rules are becoming a real issue for them. I'll ask to bring one of them up in a minute. And in general, having these lifeguards is kind of an undue burden in the idea that when the lifeguards decide to leave, they will have to shut down the pool until they can find somebody. One of the compromises that the lifeguard that the group is willing to entertain is asking for information from you and guidance from you is if we were to have a full-time attendant with the certifications of CPR, first aid, and responding certifications, would that be amenable as to rather than having the certified lifeguard?
Well, we'd have to have a public hearing if we were to amend
It's actually just a internal policy. It's not part.
But isn't it a regulation? Actually, it was referred to in those November 11 minutes, believe it or not.
Really?
Yes.
Because to my knowledge, the regulation is
one of those minutes that we just approved from November 2011 discussed. It was a public hearing on the subject, and the board in its wisdom couldn't make a decision. So they pushed it off to the next meeting.
Okay. Because to my knowledge, the regulation in question is actually a state regulation. And it gives local authority to the Board of Health to require lifeguards or not as a matter of policy and not necessarily regulation, unless we adopt our own specific local regulation regarding lifeguards.
But we did, I think, adopt a local regulation, so we'll have to check into that. Does anyone want to comment on this from the public? It's not an official public hearing, but if you have any thoughts. I think we're going to have a further discussion on this. If you could just microphone, introduce yourself, 2 minutes, and then the board will talk about what we're going to do.
Thank you, Malcolm. Jamie Holmes, I'm the general manager at the Nantucket Hotel, where we have 2 pools, but I'm also the chairman of the Nantucket Lodging Association, so I'll be speaking on behalf of both. We do follow the rules or regulations as we understand them to having a lifeguard to being open, and we find it very hard to find lifeguards to fill the positions. It's hard to find them anywhere on the island, and around the end of August they all leave, and all the hotels are bidding up the market and trying to find people who can be lifeguards, to the point where last year myself and also Tanya, who's the manager of the White Elephant Villages, we had to go get our own lifeguard certificate so that we could keep our pools open, just so we could keep them open for the guests. So we're recommending what most towns do is they have swim at your own risk, and the alternative to that is that we think that there should be people on staff that have CPR training and first aid training. but not require that the person be a certified lifeguard.
When you have that certification, do you sit by the pool or you're just present in the building?
No, when I was lifeguarding, I had to be at the pool.
Okay.
So if the lifeguard at the hotel wanted a break, they called me up, and I went out and sat at the pool and was the lifeguard.
Well, it was nice weather.
It was good duty, when you could get it, but, you're not running the hotel. But by the end of the summer, and I think the town knows this too, they run out of guards, and they continually are shutting down beaches because they can't fulfill their own staffing needs.
Okay, thank you. Questions on the board?
I have a question. If you say you would like to have people that are certified but not actually lifeguards, what would they be doing? Would they be at the pool all this time?
Well, they would be going.
I mean, they wouldn't have another job somewhere else on the property.
Right.
They would?
They wouldn't.
They wouldn't.
Right. They would be pool attendants, so there would be people who are available to take care of around.
By available, you mean on
going,
the pool?
Yeah, at the
okay,
pool.
Fine.
So, any other comments from the board?
I just remember this. We spent a fair amount of time on this.
Yes.
And it also included housing associations,
yes.
etc. And lest we ever forget the tragic death of a 7-year-old.
Yes.
About 4.5 years ago. So I think we need to spend some more time on it.
I think that's what precipitated the discussion 4 years ago. I remember that very distinctly. And, well, we need to think about this. And we need to find out. Pretty sure we had a public hearing.
Okay.
And that was in those minutes there, right? And if you read it, we needed to think about it.
Okay.
So we must have opened the public hearing again and made some regulation.
You could open the public hearing to vary the state regulation. You don't necessarily have to create your own local regulation.
Well, we need.
Public hearing?
We're not going to do anything today.
And from what I understand, the state said you could go either way.
Right.
Yep.
May I speak as well?
If you will, but just introduce yourself, please.
My name is Scott Thomas. I'm the general manager at the Nantucket Inn. Speaking on behalf of the other hotel innkeepers that have swimming pools. I actually was at that November meeting, I believe. One of the things I just want to clarify is that the legislation that's currently on the books in the state of Massachusetts is that it's a town ordinance subject to the approval of the Board of Health as to whether there are requirements for lifeguards at semi-private pools, which are hotels. We're the only entities on the island that are required to have lifeguards. As you know, the town of the beaches are not required because they put lifeguards on when they have staffing. We're the only entities that are required to have lifeguards every time we're open. We can't just close based on the whim of the ability. And I believe that also applies to the private clubs and the residential housing associations. They don't have the same requirements that we do. And so all we're really looking to do is try and level the playing field. None of us did not have someone in our facility who can actually assist a guest, but what we'd like to look at is if you're familiar with the TIPS training and some of the other trainings that are required in the hotel industry, it's difficult to hire a person and have them go to lifeguard training and be able to actually work for us. Because lifeguard training is not something that's relatively easy to get done, where CPR training and first aid training is something that could be done in relatively short order and you could actually fill a position. So we're totally aware of the safety requirements. We want to make sure we're doing the right things. But on the other hand, not having the ability to actually hire a lifeguard is putting everybody in jeopardy because we're going to either have to close the pools or you're asking for the possibility of having some kind of a problem for a pool that's been unguarded. So I just wanted to kind of
Well, thank you for your input.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you.
I think my sense is we're not quite ready to make great changes, but we need to do a little homework here.
Okay.
Understand the regulations, pull out what if it was November, we probably in December of 2011 continued the public hearing, yes?
Yeah, it's in there till December. Yeah.
December. So those minutes is what we did and listened to people. And then if we're going to change, we need a public hearing.
Would you like me to post for a public hearing in November, or?
Will you be ready by November? Or this is November? No, next
This is
month.
October.
Well, we need the board apparently needs to vote if we're going to have a public hearing. Is everyone comfortable with a public hearing?
Absolutely.
And hearing no objections, we will schedule a public hearing in November where we will again listen to the public's concerns, those for and against, and we will have a detailed review of the regs in some time, and then maybe next week we can sit down and
Absolutely.
go over what the law is, what the Nantucket regs are, etc. Thank you. Now we have some variance requests. Maybe we should do 9 North Road first, since that's sort of a continuation of last meeting.
Okay.
It just makes sense to keep going.
Yeah, and now before you start, I'd like to state for the record that I've filed a disclosure statement so that I could sit in on 9 and 5 North Road.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. So let's do 9 North Road.
Okay. So with 9 North Road, previously the permit was pulled for the original conventional septic system for the 10 bedrooms. We have before you the application so that we can do an innovative alternative system on the same lot with the 8 bedrooms, I believe. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Dan Malloy, Site Design Engineering.
So this would be inconsistent. Would be consistent with the requirement to do an innovative and alternative system in that area.
Right.
However, it is also granting the bedroom credit in this situation. So if you would like to explain a little bit further.
Right. If you recall, we're here before you this afternoon due to a, whatever we want to call it, situation that happened with the previous permit. So we're now requesting a variance to get 8 bedrooms versus what was prescribed as 5. As you know, we're previously reviewed and approved for 10. That permit was revoked, so we've now filed a variance request with an IA system to ask to put in 8 bedrooms. We feel the request is justified given the conditions of the past, what's happened here in terms of what's transpired, in terms of the procedures and the applications that were reviewed and approved. So we'd ask you to consider the variance. We've supplied a letter outlining our reasons for it. The calculations of the nitrogen loading, we are reducing the nitrogen based on what was previously approved, based on what would be approved conventionally, as well as an IA system. We think we are reducing the nitrogen levels going into the harbor, going into the groundwater. It's a justified waiver with the IA system. Again, it's something that the board or your previous agents routinely approved in this area, in the entire district. There are numerous or dozens of IA systems in this area with IAs with extra bedroom credits, both constructed, under construction, various stages of review as we speak. So we think it's just and fair going forward that at least in this case, an approval be granted for the variance to allow this construction to continue. And considering we proceeded on 10 bedrooms, we're asking to scale it down to 8 as a justified request.
Right. And you have some nice numbers in your letter here.
Yes, using the IA systems, the nitrogen reductions can vary, but we're looking at a 70% approximate,
Right.
70% range reduction in nitrogen, versus the previous system with no IA system was a full-on. There was no IA. Now we're putting the IA system in to give you that reduction to pull the numbers down.
Will this be a year-round residence?
We have to assume we'll be year-round residents. We can't.
Questions from the board? Sense of the board?
I think it's fair.
Questions from the staff?
No, I think we're
Yes,
we're
I'm
okay.
sorry. Could you please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Dan Bailey. I'm an attorney at the Boston law firm of Pierce Atwood, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Lady Bird LLC, which is the immediate abutter to the south of this property. And I'm here to object to the variance request and actually to make 3 points. The first is, and I'll elaborate a little on each, but I just want to give you a flavor for what I'm going to say. The first is that I think that this request is premature. You issued a stop work order for this particular property. I was out there an hour ago. There are 8 or 10 pickup trucks. There's clearly work going on. Your letter of September 21st said that all work related to the construction of this septic system should stop. They don't have a valid septic system. Therefore, they don't have a valid building permit, and I think you should require them to come into compliance with your regulations before you consider a variance request. My second point is that I don't think they meet the standard for the variance request. I'll get into that in a minute. And the third thing, and I'll show you a plan to you, is where they're proposing to construct part of these improvements, the septic system improvements, as well as other improvements, are within a no-build development restriction, which they need to go to the State Natural Heritage Program to have amended and approved. And if you go out there right now, the entire site has been graded and leveled, and that development restriction has not been amended. So what you've got here is a situation where there is a very large house under construction that doesn't have many of the permits that it needs. Further, the Board of Appeals last week had a hearing on this. There'd been the building permit had been revoked, appealed to the Board of Appeals. Now, in that situation, yes, the construction can go forward pending the appeal. But the point I'm making is that there's an awful lot going on here, and not all the right permits are in place. So the one other, let me go back to the variance. Mr. Malloy mentioned the standard for a variance, which I think you're very familiar with. It's manifest injustice, and it's being able to provide the same level of environmental protection as without the variance. Well, on the manifest injustice, I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, I did actually a little bit of research. What does manifest injustice mean? And the Supreme Court has said it means kind of whatever you want it to mean, and I think that's largely true. It's very much a matter of what it means locally in custom and practice. And I've appeared before many other Nantucket boards. I've never appeared before you, and I understand that you probably have a practice there. But I don't think it's manifest injustice to go from, an 8-bedroom house to a 5-bedroom house in a very sensitive nitrogen area. I also don't think it's manifest injustice that someone submitted an application for a 10-bedroom house on a 53,000 square foot lot in a nitrogen sensitive area that failed to mention that it was in a nitrogen sensitive area. The whole notion of there being some sort of unfairness because someone submitted an erroneous permit application that ultimately was revoked, just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. With respect to the equivalent environmental protection, I think that's a hard argument to make too. Yeah, maybe on a lot-by-lot basis, you're very close, but when you start looking at all of these lots and the number of bedrooms and the size of these houses in a nitrogen-sensitive area, you collectively would probably have some impacts. And lastly, I just want to hand to the board, and Arthur and Dan, I'm sorry I don't have this for you, but I know you've got it. May I approach?
Please.
This is the application that accompanied the plan that accompanied the application, and what I've shown on there, and I didn't have my colored pencils with me, so it doesn't show as well as it should. But this box is the original building envelope that's been approved by NESHAP. This line is what they're seeking to amend, and the cross-hatched area is where the improvements are proposed. That is, at least right today, subject to a development restriction.
Let me pass this by. Let's go back to your first issue about continuing buildings without a permit. You said that they went to the Board of Appeals?
They did.
And the Board of Appeals response was?
The Board of Appeals response was ultimately the request for revocation of the building permit was withdrawn because the Board of Appeals has another hearing coming up next week, at which is they're going to reach the merits. It's a height question.
So they haven't
addressed that.
They haven't addressed that
yet. Yeah.
Arthur.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to point out that the applicant in this situation has proceeded, as I mentioned at the last meeting, in good faith throughout. We understand that the applicability of the nitrogen loading area restrictions resulted in this board revoking the earlier granted 10-bedroom permit, which had been issued previously. The former Board of Health Director was well aware of the situation and had regularly granted permits in that situation on the basis that the property was served by town water. We understand that on reading of the regulation, that may have been at least considered to be an incorrect interpretation of the rules, but nevertheless, it had been for a long time the position of the health agent, and the permit had issued on that basis, as did many permits in areas in nitrogen loading areas, pretty much other than Nantucket. In any event, that permit was issued, was revoked. We've gone. The house is under construction. We've gone back to the drawing board. Dan has prepared the present application for an 8-bedroom system using the calculations applicable when the bonus bedrooms are available. And we think that considering the fact that the owner had bought the property and the understanding that the interpretation of the regulations by the health department was as it was at that time, and now to find that the number of bedrooms in the house would be reduced to that extent, we think that that is manifest injustice. As to the other issues that were raised, none of them really have anything to do, as we see it, with the Board of Health. The issue as to natural heritage regulation under MESA is separate. That'll be handled separately. Obviously, we can't violate the terms of that, and it's up to us to get it modified. But that's totally separate from the health regulation. As far as the zoning issue is concerned, actually, that was an application filed by Mr. Bailey's client on behalf of abutters, and that was before the Board of Appeals. They were seeking the revocation of the existing building permit. There had been a order issued by the building department since then, which we had appealed from with regard to the zoning issue as to the height. After the thing was presented at great length at the Board of Appeals, and it appeared that the Board of Appeals was not at this point in time going to agree with the appellant's position with regard to the revocation as opposed to suspension of the building permit. They withdrew the application. We will be back before the Board of Appeals, and meanwhile we're pending before the HDC in terms of a minor modification to the design of the house, which will enable compliance with the zoning height requirement that's at issue. In any event, the question here is the appropriateness of the granting of a variance with regard to the number of bedrooms going from 5 to 8 on the basis of the protections that will be afforded by the IA system, consistent with what has been done, as I said, in many lots in this area and throughout the island. And under the unusual circumstances that we have here involving the revocation of the permit, which was issued previously by the health department. And accordingly, we would ask that you grant the variance. As should be granted to this owner and those in this unusual situation who will be similarly situated. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, do you have comment?
We feel that in light of the situation where the previous director did actually issue the permits, we feel that the two variance requests that you have before you on the same road are fair. It would be a fair compromise from where it was before and what they were expecting to do. I would recommend that we approve the variance, but it is the leisure of the board.
Comments from the board?
I have a couple of questions. How many houses are in proximity to this house?
We don't.
There's quite a few.
Like
Right along the harbor. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A new one next to it, 7. These people up on the hill, 8, 10, 12 houses. With most of them conventional septics,
Right.
just as big as they're looking for with an IA.
Other comments? Steve, you have a comment?
No, I'm good with what they want to do.
Any other comments? Yes, please.
I'll defer to Mr. Bailey first.
I just one clarification point and one other point. It was not my client that filed the appeal to the Board of Appeals. It was Mr. Cohen's client. And the other thing I just want to point out, this MISA restriction is, I think, an important item for the board. And I know you hear this all the time. The planning board hears it all the time. You probably don't hear it as much, but one of the first things when people are sparring over these types of things is the lawyers get up and say they don't have adequate property rights. And the rule that the boards have to adhere to is, can the applicant demonstrate on its face that it has adequate property rights for the permit that it's seeking? This is the unusual case where they can't. They can't give you an opinion that the applicant has the property right to construct what they're proposing to construct. They should go get that property right and then come back to this board. The other thing I'll add, and I will read from the restriction: enforceability. The town and the Division of Fish and Wildlife, jointly and severally, shall have the authority and the right to enforce this declaration of restriction and are benefited parties. Thank you.
Mr. Cohen.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Stephen Cohen. I represent Stephen Alfieri, who's in a butter to this property. And I think that the recommendation of the staff is appropriate, but I think that Mr. Bailey's last point is really the key one here, that this board, as an entity of the town, which has an enforcement authority in the MISA restriction, should either condition its approval or delay its approval until the applicant has shown that it is requesting a system that is not within a MISA restricted area. I think it would be inappropriate to approve a variance that includes a disturbance of something that the town is supposed to enforce. It is no burden on this applicant to get a 5-bedroom permit by right and then come back for the variance, or have a condition on the variance that they can only use those, get those extra bedrooms once they have solved their problem. Thank you.
Arthur, do you have a comment on?
If I can speak to some of the MISA stuff. Excuse me. The project is in review with MISA. They've reviewed it. They've given us a verbal okay with the delineation that we're showing on these plans. So again, what you've seen on the plans to date is nothing's been hidden. There's a proposed line and an existing line. So that's been common knowledge since day one. I don't want anyone to feel like we're trying to pull one over on you. It's common knowledge. It's been on the plans. Permit has been reviewed by that agency. They're just waiting to get their paperwork in order to issue the approval. That's what we've been told. In terms of working inside or outside that area, if it's needed, we can certainly provide you, if assuming the variance is granted, we could certainly make sure that the plan that is given to you under that variance is within that area until such time as that final paperwork is in order. That's perfectly fine. We can do that. That's not a problem. But in terms of the MISA approval itself, I don't think we see quite how it's this board's particular issue. Thank you.
When do you expect the formal approval?
It could be days.
Could be days.
Days. It all depends. It's a state agency. Could be days. Could be weeks. But it should be forthcoming.
So if we approve the variance, just hypothetically, and you were disapproved by MISA, what will happen?
In terms of before you, nothing.
But what will that affect the system? You won't start. When would you start putting it in?
Well, the system can go on the ground as soon whenever we get a permit for
Right.
it. In terms of the MESA, if for whatever reason they say we can't change the line, then whatever system we design has to be inside their approval.
Exactly.
Which can be done. That's not a problem.
So if
for
we
us.
approve this, or it would have to be, you would still have to construct the alternative system within the MISA guidelines.
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
If there's a chance that they don't get approved, could that system be located somewhere else
The
to
system
get the number of
The system as it stands, if we were to get this variance, can be located entirely within their approved limit of work so that that doesn't have to change. It can also be relocated if they do change it. So we have enough physical land on our property within their area to build what we're proposing. We don't need to go outside their footprint with the septic system. So whatever this board should decide, we can comply with their requirements and yours as well, regardless of which direction each one goes. So they don't have to be connected.
If we approved, I just didn't want you to put in a system that you'd then have to move again.
Well, in that case, we're going to propose a system to you that complies with what their current line is.
Fine.
And if we're confident they're going to change it, then we may give you a revised plan with a different permit at some point down the road,
Okay.
which shows a new line.
Okay.
Well, my question is then, can we put a stipulation in the approval if we approve the variance that if Mesa doesn't give them permission, they have to move it and it will comply with everything?
We could put that in.
Huh?
We could make a motion to that. We could include that.
That would be fine. At the same time, obviously, we can't do anything that violates the law, and so we can't. We have to be in compliance with both your permit and the MISA permit
Right.
at the end of the day in order for this to work.
I just don't want to get into a situation.
So
We have an issue on the island with a system that has been put in, completed, and done, and it's in violation of all kinds of rules.
Right,
And I just don't want to, and that makes it very complicated for us.
That doesn't work for us either, for obvious reasons. I mean, we don't want to be spending the time and money putting in a system that's going to have to come out. No, we've got to make them consistent with each other, and which we don't anticipate any difficulty in doing.
Arthur, what would the problem be to wait till you get formal permission from me to do it?
Well, we're just trying to make our plans at the present time, and obviously we're not going to install the system until we have the two permits consistent with each other. We'd just like to know where we stand on the project so that we can prepare to go ahead, prepare with our remaining plans with regard to construction as we go through the various other permitting issues that have come up in connection with this matter.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Well, I would like to make a motion that we will grant the variance if and when they get the formal thing from MISA.
Do we hear a second?
I guess I'm fine with that, yeah.
Any further discussion on that? Then the motion presented is that we would grant the variance, essentially pending the approval from MISA. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. The variance is granted with that small stipulation.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to 5 North Road, which is the same neighborhood.
It's generally the same situation. A permit was approved.
Yeah, when I was reading this, I got confused, and I thought that maybe you'd misprinted 9 and 5 until I figured out it was 2 separate. Same issue.
Same issue, 2
Right.
separate locations. In this case, the permit was approved. There is an IA system permit approved by the previous director for, I believe, 6 bedrooms on the property, and there is also a permit for 8 bedrooms conventional. I believe the variance request here is to get the 2 extra bedrooms for the 6-bedroom IA.
Okay. Comments?
That's correct. Arthur Gasparo, Blackman Associates, the engineer for the applicant. And I have spelled out in the letter, I don't want to be overly repetitive of your time because there are a lot of similarities to the last application with respect to the bedrooms. The difference does exist with the MISA situation where we are completely within the approved MISA boundaries and are not proposing any kind of difference, any change, whatnot to the restrictions. So there's essentially a split rail fence that's along the restricted area, and we're working completely and proposed within that approved area. We are, again, including an IA component. It meets the system that is proposed, meets all of Title V regulations, considering the approval letters that are granted for individual technologies. In this case, we're proposing a Septitech system that utilizes denitrification, and the loading rate is consistent with that approval letter. So the one variance request is with respect to 6404B, the local regulation, and we believe that we meet the standards per 6407 as we've enumerated in the letter. And I'm also here with Attorney Cohen, should you have any questions or concerns that we may be able to try to address for you.
Questions from the board? Comments? Very quiet board.
No.
I have no
pretty
questions.
straightforward.
It's in keeping consistently with 9.
Yes.
And I try to be consistent best we can. I hear no questions. I have no problems with this. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the variance for 5 North Road? Then all in favor of approving the variance, aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. The variance is approved.
Thank you very much.
The next one.
I have to recuse myself on this one.
Okay.
So do
So we can't.
What?
even
I. I do
discuss-
too.
Well, then we will have to postpone
We
this.
have to postpone this one.
What?
There's not enough of
We
quorum.
have to have 3 of us.
Okay.
And 2 people have recused themselves. Therefore,
We'll have
we'll
to
do this
postpone.
next month.
Yeah, we do not have a quorum. To
I
sit in.
apologize to whoever has brought this forward,
31 Quays.
31 Quaig, but we unfortunately
Not even here.
do not have a quorum to act on this. So we will do it in November.
Okay.
4 Moore's End.
Yes. This is a variance request.
Which one is this? Where are you?
4 Moore's.
4 more. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
John Bracken, Bracken Engineering, just passing out some backup information to orientate you with the project.
Yes.
Also have just a caption of the site plan, in case you haven't seen it.
So
Which
this
where's Pulpus Road? Factory Lane.
Right near it, right at the beginning of the.
That's Baltus Road.
Yeah, so this is a variance from the board. This variance is requesting that we create an aggregate lot here so that we can create larger. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is to create an aggregate plan so that we can create a larger system on that smaller property with keeping certain spaces as open parcel.
Thank you. For the record, Don Bracken, Bracken Engineering. Jim Houghton, the property owner, is also here tonight who may want to speak as well. The assessor's plan that I submitted to you, I've highlighted with a red X. That's the property location. I've also highlighted in purple open space areas that are associated with this development. This is a 1986 development. It was a cluster development where developers are granted certain incentives if they set aside large areas of open space, which was the case on this project, where these lots were created smaller than the zoning at that time. The lots range between 25 and 30,000 square feet. Our lot in question is about 28,000 square feet. The subdivision consisted of 11 lots total. The lot in question happens to be the last vacant lot in the subdivision. As you know, when Title V changed in 1995, after the subdivision was created and already the house was being built, the requirement for nitrogen loading took effect, requiring one bedroom for every 10,000 square feet, especially in this area where each individual lot is served by their own individual wells. Similar to the previous variances, a permit was issued for this lot for 4 bedrooms of July of 2014. That permit was issued on the basis of other permits issued in the same subdivision, that the 1 per 10,000 square feet didn't apply for each lot because of the open space land around it and the open space land credit. In order to, if you were to do the nitrogen loading calculations for the development as a whole, it would be well below those required for each individual lot. The technical issue, one of the technical issues here in this particular case, is when they changed Title V in 1995, they did recognize that this would be an issue with cluster developments. So Title V does have a nitrogen aggregate plan requirement as part of the regulations, where it's in writing, it gets recorded at the registry, and the open space land is restricted for any type of uses that could result in any generation of nitrogen. That was not done in this particular case. However, permits were issued without that technical fact. And this isn't the only instance I've seen this. I've also seen this in some of the other Cape Cod towns where, you know, they've looked at the project, they see how much open space is there. They know that technically you would meet the requirements for aggregate flow, but because of the age of the subdivision and the number of lots left, it wasn't required. So we are asking, the variances that we're asking for, the Nantucket Harbor watershed requirements for 1 bedroom for every 10,000 square feet. This is in the Zone B, not the Zone A. And we're also asking for a Title V variance not to produce the nitrogen aggregate plan. However, not to make this any more confusing, but again, this project is similar to the other projects. We are proposing an IA system for this property, and with the IA system, we do meet Title V nitrogen loading calculations with the 28,000 square foot lot, along with the system. It's the same as meeting the 1 per 10,000 square feet under Title V. So we're not looking for a Title V variance as far as that's concerned. We're only looking for the variance as far as the harbor watershed area is concerned.
Well, and it's an IA system.
And it's an IA system.
Yes.
And so all that stuff I said about open space was more background.
Yeah.
If you grant the variance with an IA system, it would be just as if we were in Surfside, which happens quite a bit. We add an IA system to get the additional bedrooms.
You couldn't even begin to talk to me unless you said IA system.
Right.
Because last month, right up the road on North Pasture Road, we insisted on an IA system in the new construction. So,
Okay.
all right.
I don't know. With that, I think my client, the owner, would like to also say a few words.
Please.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Houghton. I'm the owner of this lot. I just want to give a little bit of background on how I actually bought the lot. After doing the Nantucket Shuffle for years and years, like most people, my wife and I identified this land for sale at 4 Moores End Lane in January of 2014, and it appeared ideal. It was on a cluster subdivision. It was surrounded by 30 acres of open conservation land, trails throughout, and also I have a family living on Kelly Road and Schimmel Pond Road, so my children can ride their bikes to see their cousins. It was perfect. I didn't rush in. I still want to do my due diligence. I hired Don to test the soil. I hired David Jenkins to test the water, and I made a contingency of the offer that I could get a 4-bedroom septic system. I got all of that before I moved forward with the purchase. I moved forward with the purchase and then went through, hired an architect, the HDC, building permit. I've got a foundation in the ground. The first shipment of building materials are on the site right now. And then 3 weeks ago, I got an email about the change in regulations. The first thing I did was I emailed Don and I asked, does this affect me? And he said it absolutely could. So you just said don't talk about the IA system, but I'm actually here to talk about the IA system.
No, I said you have to talk about the IA system.
Right. So explain to me why the permit that I received on July 14th of 2014 is not valid today. That was for a 4-bedroom traditional system.
I'll let Roberto answer that. I mean, the rules changed 6 months ago, essentially.
Okay. What didn't change for me is the money that I spent based on the representation that was made to me. And I don't know a lot about waivers, and I don't know a lot about regulations. But I do know, and there's a lot of attorneys, or maybe there's not a lot of attorneys left, about legitimate expectation. And I know about it protects individuals like myself when a representation is made by a public authority. And based on that, relying upon that, you go out and you spend close to $1 million, and then they tell you, we've changed our minds, and you can't do it. So I'm here to get my permit validated. I want my 4-bedroom traditional system that was issued in July of 2014. Thank you.
You mean traditional septic system?
Correct.
Well, we're talking about an IA system.
That's not what I have a permit for. I want my permit validated.
That's understandable. However, the construction was not completed before the regulation came into effect. Once the regulation came into effect, this turns into a new construction.
It was begun before.
The permit was given before.
And
correct.
The construction began before.
But the construction of the septic system has not been. So as a result, the septic system has to comply by the modern rules. There is no grandfathering under Board of Health regulations.
And that's it. That's what you're hanging your hat on.
It's up to the board to vary anything under local Board of Health regulations. But as the staff, I would recommend against it. I would recommend the IA.
See, Les, I mean, again, I have to be consistent and fair to the community as well. And a month ago, we had a similar situation right up the road from you, and we insisted on an IA system based upon Regulation 64, which we passed this year. Any questions from the board?
No, I support it.
No, no questions at all.
I guess my question is, who pays for the additional cost? I mean, is that mine to bear? And it wasn't my mistake. The rules changed, but it's mine to bear. It's a question that I don't only have. My lender's saying, you got a construction loan, and there's a line item here for a septic. Where's the extra $20,000 coming from?
Well, I have a question, Jim. Let's say you bought that and you got your 4-bedroom permit and you didn't build for 6 years. Would you expect your 4-bedroom regular Title V system to still be there for you?
The fact is I'm renting and I'm trying to get to a situation where I'm not paying rent and paying a mortgage, so I'm not going to sit around for 6 years waiting to move in. But, that it does actually raise a point, which is from what I'm understanding, the sewer's coming down the street, and I'll be compelled or forced or something to tie into that. So now I'm looking at paying for an expensive IA system for a system that might be in the ground for 2 years before I have to tie into sewer. I mean, that to me seems ridiculous. What I would propose is if I have to do the 4-bedroom IA system, that at least whatever the overrun is for my design, my installation, the service, whatever it is over a traditional system, can I be credited for that when I tie into the sewer, waive some of my tie-in fees so I'm not have to pay twice?
Art.
It's not ours.
That Drew Lane is outside of the
Needs.
administrative consent order needs area.
It's not Drew Lane, though.
Going to be
It's
sewer.
Moore's End.
What's that?
It's on Moore's End.
Moore's End.
I'm within
Where
the proposed.
It's the next. Drew Lane's the next one up.
is the next one out? I'd have to have that map.
We don't have the sewer map.
So the sewer, you don't know how far the sewer's going out there.
Gardner Road.
Gardner Road.
I'm at Gardner Road. I'm right
where's
there.
that? And there's that
I mean-
continuation. I have that.
You can always plead your case later on with the IA because there are provisions there in Title V saying you did your due diligence to put the IA component in, even when in the future sewer comes down the road and we have a regulation that has mandatory hookup. There's provisions in there which you could come and argue to the town or the board and say, I've spent this money. I don't think I should have to hook up for, or until my system fails or whatever.
Can I get it as a recommendation of this approval that I should be credited towards my privilege fees for having put in the system for 2 years?
I don't think.
Well, I don't. It's how are we going to give you credit on something we don't know that's going to actually even going to happen? It hasn't,
I don't think we have the authority to give them credit.
Yeah.
We can make the recommendation, but I'm not sure we have the authority.
It would be entirely up to the town, the board of selectmen in the town at that point to do any sort of waiver of that sort. We can provide a recommendation in the same concept as a resolution in Congress where we condemn something or not to, but it is ultimately up to the other board. We do not have the authority to waive that credit for you.
I hate, it's difficult. I mean, our Board of Selectmen representative is not here today.
And I think the board understands the plight you're in, but even, Zone A and B deemed by the town as a nitrogen-sensitive area was deemed that way in 2003. Now, our former director who issued you that permit pretty much made a mistake.
But I shouldn't pay for his mistake. You guys have a closer relationship with him than I do, right? Who owns that mistake? But I have to pay for a new design. I have to pay for a new permit application. I can't get any of that waived. It's just it's unfair. I've heard the term manifest something fairness. Well, there's no fairness here. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Comments? Discussion?
I think he's going to have to do the IA.
I agree.
The question is, how can we help him in that?
At tie-in, we
don't have that.
We don't have the authority to waive the tie-in fees.
We don't have the tie-in fees. But you said he could make that argument
Down the road, yeah.
when he has to do his tie-in fees.
Yes.
The sewer project hasn't even been
Yeah.
approved. It's
Hasn't
only
even been
going to
approved
go
yet.
before town meeting in April, so
Correct.
we can't.
And it's outside the
It's outside our jurisdiction. Yeah.
administrative
It
area?
is just
Close.
outside. And when I mean just, it's within a few
I
hundred
mean,
feet.
the sewer is coming up Gardner Road only to Pulpus Road, right? It's not going to go across the road.
Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't.
I don't think anybody knows.
Well,
We don't know.
all right.
Yeah, that's
All right.
may never happen.
We can't predict the future, and one of the struggles we had when we approved 64 was that we'd end up in situations like this. But we had waited since I've been on the board for years, hearing that the sewer was coming, and it has never come. And I don't even know if it's going to come. So I have to deal with what we are here. So if we deny this variance, the option is, sir, you have a pretty strong case if the sewer does come and dealing with your tie-in fees, I think.
Yeah.
Based on Title V. Please speak. Just come forward and identify yourself.
Excuse me, I will. Hi, Mike Glowacki. Just listening to what was said here and the question that came, what would you do if this was 6 years from now? The permit was issued, and the permit is valid for 2 years. That's my understanding. Would that be, does somebody know about that? So we're not talking about a situation where you've got dozens of these circumstances out there. I mean, how many more could there be that were issued in this zone? It's valid for 2 years, and maybe the engineers or somebody could do a calculation, but the idea, and the sewers are coming. They're going to have to come one way or another.
I agree.
And the idea, I spent a couple of years on that sewer planning work group and so forth. So I say that with, I guess, no more ability to see the future than anybody, but certainly with conviction from what we talked about. So if somebody could calculate the difference in the nitrate contribution from an IA system versus a standard system for the period of time that plug in your own guess about how long it's going to be before the sewers are down there. And what are we really talking about in terms of nitrate contribution to the harbor relative to what falls out of the sky every day? And so I recognize the challenge in front of your board, but it seems to me that when the town of Nantucket issues a permit to somebody that's valid for 2 years, that it's just going to get more and more difficult if something can't be done about this. Thanks.
Thank you. You have comments, sir?
If I can make a comment on the IA systems that we have been approving all meet the ANSI, the ANSI standard 245, which is 50% nitrogen reduction. So across the board, blanket, all the new systems, all the IA systems are producing 50% less nitrogen than a traditional system of the same size. So that varies property by property depending on how much effluent they're pumping through. However, in an exact apples to apples comparison of a 4-bedroom septic and a 4-bedroom septic conventional, it would be 50% less. So. Over the course of years and over the course of many properties, it can be much more.
Okay, thank you all for your comments. Do we have a motion?
I'd just like to say the two people before us, they had permits issued also. Okay. And so,
all right.
In an effort to be consistent, which we're trying to do,
we need a motion from someone to approve the variance or not approve the variance.
I'd like the motion to approve the variance for an IA, right?
No.
Oh, he's trying to.
He wants a conventional system.
Oh, well,
he wants essentially the request is to.
I don't think. No.
It's just worded incorrectly.
Let's make sure we know what we're.
The official request is to approve it with the IA.
That's what I thought.
Right.
Yes.
Mr. Houghton was pleading his case.
No.
So.
If it's an IA.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. All right, so you made a motion to approve the variance with an IA system.
With an IA.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. The variance with an IA system is approved.
Okay. The next part above you, in front of you, is the 10C Crow's Nest Way. It is a request for a tight tank on the property based on a previously recommended permit that we're requesting for a reaffirmation of the same permit, I believe.
Why are we doing it again?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Arthur Gasparo, Blackman Associates. in order, Title V requires that when the Board of Health issues an approval for a tight tank, that it's recorded at the Registry of Deeds in the chain of title. And the past approval that was issued was not in a format that was acceptable to the Registrar of Deeds. So it's something that's already been approved, but what I've done is to work with the registrar and your staff to develop a form essentially that the registrar will accept for recording, especially against registered land.
Okay, fine. Comments, questions from the board? This seems pretty straightforward. I have a motion to approve this tight tank.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
This isn't anything to do with that Crow's Nest Way where there's 6 or 7 houses on one system.
Yes, that is the property that has the several cottages, but they're served by individual systems on that property. So I have designed maybe 4 years ago or so, one of them had gone on to another tight tank. In other words, it's not a shared system. It's a very unique situation out there where there's individual systems. Most of them, I'd say, are pre-78. So this is to handle. This is no, and this tight tank is to handle one cottage, and you're very likely to see more of them on the soils at this property are very difficult and options limited.
All right, thank
you. Okay. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor of approving the tight tank at Crow's Nest?
Aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye.
The next
Request
one-
is approved. We have another tight tank request. This is out in Millie's area, right?
Correct. This is the system that was previously installed in the area that was approved by the board to require tight tanks. This system was not a fully permitted system, so right now we're looking to put in the tight tank in response to that.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Is it a failed system?
No, this was the system that was installed after July 1.
Oh, okay. That's right. Okay.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo, I'm here to address any additional questions that you may have, but essentially it was a failed system. There was a system erroneously put in. It's been the subject of some discussion in the past.
Right.
This application is to remove that system, replace it with a tight tank, and we've also been through the Conservation Commission process and received approval for them for the tight tank also.
And that goes along with everything that goes along with the tight tank, the pump out thing, and okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other comments? I have a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of approving a tight tank at 13 Mass Avenue? Say aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. It's approved.
Thank you very much.
Next item on your agenda, the Family and Children's Services asked to be present today to give a presentation to the board, and I believe we have a representative.
Hi, I'm just going to drop a book.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. A new subject.
I know, I'm not asking for any variance. This is very serious. My name's Tess Pearson. I'm the Executive Director of Family and Children's Service, and I was invited by Dr. McNabb to come and share a little bit about our agency and just share a little bit of information and see if I could help with any questions. To my knowledge, in the last almost 55 years that our agency has been a private not-for-profit, this would be a first time we've done this. So our agency, again, is supported some by the town, a lot by private grants, and then we take insurance. We serve about, to date, 23,000 visits a year. We currently have over 500 people in treatment with us. We have a breadth of services that are only exclusively offered through our agency. For example, we have psychiatric testing for public and private school for children and adults to really exceed and excel. We are the only court-ordered mandated treatment provider for first and second offender for substance abuse. We also have a great family resource center, which is free and will be offered for the community for the next 5 years. We also do a large program that's for children exclusively called the Children's Behavioral Health Initiative. You'll likely see my staff of 27 at the Boys and Girls Club, Strong Wings, public schools, private schools, and in homes, really helping families get healthier and children succeed. It's been a really tough last fiscal year in our community with losing many members through suicide. What we're trying to do is spread a lot of community awareness about prevention, getting more people into treatment, and lowering stigma around asking for help. So presenting at the Builders Association, Rotary, Legion Hall, VFW. I go up to Beacon Hill quite a bit and have a lot of political support trying to get more funding for Nantucket and the islands as we are 30 miles out to sea. So just wanted to say a hello and see if I could help with any questions, but we're an open door and want to be a great assistance to anybody who's looking to make positive change in their life. And again, the Family Resource Center, 40 hours a week of free parenting education, teen groups, Spanish-speaking supports, clinical assessment for kids, no cost whatsoever for families, just trying to get more people services earlier on.
Well, thank you. Comments from the boards, and I have some questions.
Biggest problem today?
I would say IV heroin use. Our Caucasian, white, 19 to 27-year-old, primarily males. A lot of young Nantucket people are returning back home after college, hopefully having completed college, not necessarily connecting to the workforce. Very easy to find heroin on island. It's cheaper than pot. SAMHSA just released a new research study saying anybody who had ever abused a pain pill from ages 14 to 29 were 19 times likely to try heroin. It's a growing concern for us as it's an easy way to avoid life and makes most people feel much better. So it's being replaced by alcohol by a lot of young people.
What's the incidence on the island? I've always...
You know, we for the last 28 years have been the emergency crisis responders for any significant incident around homicide, suicide, overdose. We work very closely with the police force and EMTs. We had 288 significant incidents this last fiscal year. That is largely underreported because we now know that Narcan is being administered by many people at home without having any medical intervention whatsoever. Walgreens gives it for free without asking in Hyannis. So it's very easy for people to go off island, get the medication-assisted recovery to revive themselves and never seek treatment.
No, that's horrible. I mean, that's...
So this is why we're trying to get out there talking about that there are a lot more ways. We have 29 free groups, no insurance. Doesn't matter what language you are. It doesn't matter your ability to pay. If people want treatment, to come in earlier before it does end up being critical.
So you're talking about, that number was just IV users? What about oral opiate users?
The progression of addiction usually starts by eating, snorting, inhaling smoking, and then IV use. We find that most people end up switching from an oral use of a drug to an IV use much sooner, much earlier on. We are seeing middle school and early teenagers starting to use heroin.
So we don't officially track that as a disease.
It's we in the mental health substance abuse field are very concerned about it. Many people do not admit to their substance use as it's.
And it's something be hard for people to admit, and people not be happy reporting it.
We work on harm reduction, recognizing that people in the throes of addiction are likely going to use, but can we lower the incident of infectious disease and AIDS? Can we lower the incidence of overdose? We work really closely with our sister not-for-profits, Access Nantucket. We do a lot of outreach with the Nantucket Community School, partner with A Safe Place because we recognize mental health always coincides with substance abuse. So we're just trying to get more information out there, offer more free services.
Right. We looked at hepatitis C incidence about a year ago, and it was it was in line with Massachusetts, but I'm not sure it was in line with maybe other safer places.
Nantucket's done an unbelievable job around HIV/AIDS prevention, and Hep C is now on the coattails of IV heroin use. It is a huge concern of people's.
So Is there anything we can do to help? I mean, we do more than just do septic systems.
Absolutely. As the Board of Public Health, this is commonplace knowledge. I do a community forum once a month, usually in the public schools. We just ask for more representatives to get involved and to join. I'm the co-chair of the Behavioral Health Task Force. I'm the steering committee of the Healthy Community Collaborative and the chair of the Post-Traumatic Stress Management team for the entire community. We'd love more people to get involved in response. So just spreading information.
I have a question.
Yes.
With the new hospital on the way, are there plans in place? Because while Narcan can save someone from an overdose, there's no follow-up or there's no treatment after that. Are there plans in place, or are you talking with the people at the hospital about creating a treatment program?
I am always in conversation with Margot Hartman. I know they have a lot of really great ideas of what this new hospital could be. I'm extremely supportive of helping and wanting to work with Nantucket Cottage Hospital in any capacity possible. We most definitely need a detox unit. We most definitely need a psych swing bed. We need a crisis stabilization unit, but I know that that's costly. And
Are those plans for the new hospital, or?
I wish I could say.
Yes.
I wish I was part of those final discussions. But yes, there's always a community awareness of we have significant gaps in our service. We don't have a halfway house, a sober house.
I think I saw written somewhere in the newspaper that there's contemplation of an additional $15 million. As far as the goal is concerned, that possibly could, of course they don't have it yet, that possibly could be used, and this would be incorporated into it.
I think all of us are on the same page of what we need. It's how to get together and spread some awareness and have the funding to do so. Most definitely.
Yeah, well, I really compliment you on your work. It must be, I'm not sure I could do it. It'd be very depressing, I would think.
I would say it's actually the most rewarding thing ever. Many people see mental health and substance use around tragedy, and that's usually when people are not engaged in treatment. I see it as the number of couples that stay together and don't get divorced, the number of kids that finish high school, the number of people that are able to self-advocate, feel good about themselves. Some of the healthiest people you know are likely in treatment.
Well, let us know what we can do. I mean, I don't know how. We do have some regulatory authority, and you can think of any creative ways to use it.
I think bringing the right people here, supporting town funding for health and human services, populating our task force with town officials. That would be a great way to start.
Okay.
I'd be happy to send you on all my e-bikes.
Well, send me. I can. Want me to participate? I'll be glad.
That'd be great.
To do that.
Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Ask me any questions whenever you have time.
Okay.
I'm going to excuse myself for 2 minutes, but keep going.
Okay, no problem. We have a quorum.
My co-chair will take care of it.
Oh boy, here we go.
I should have left the variances.
Would have been a little bit easier. The next item on the agenda is actually a discussion on the ACOs. The Woodward and Curran has asked us to adopt the Monomoy area, the Somerset area, and the additional plus parcels for consideration into the ACO program. What this means is, right now, the way our regulations and the way we have adopted the ACO, we have only adopted the Nantucket needs area. So what this would do is officially declare the Monomoy, Somerset, and Plus areas as needs areas for the sewer. These are the same 3 parcels or 3 locations that are on the warrant for town meeting to be funded for the sewer project. Woodward and Curran has asked us to put this on the agenda so that we can officially adopt them, so that we can start accepting ACOs in this area.
Good, great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so we would need a vote from the board.
A motion?
We got to wait till he gets back.
Oh, okay. I thought we had a motion.
We do have a quorum.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Well, you make a motion? Second?
yes.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Done.
All right.
Okay. And
Got
then
one out on you.
I'll vote on the next one.
There's 2 left, and very important. So the next two items are actual ACO requests. The next one on the item is 238 Nantucket Road. This is actually, is Paul here? Yeah, he just stepped out. This is actually for the for a failed septic system. It is, I believe, hydraulically failed, and what we're looking to do is put in the so-called Band-Aid repair and then enter the ACO until we can get sewer out there.
I just, let me ask you a question. Okay, this Band-Aid approach, I've been hearing since Richard Ray, I met him. It seemed, but none of us are really sure how long it's going to take to get the sewer in Nantucket. I mean, it could
That's
be.
what I was trying to say before. I mean, the frustrating thing to me is
it could be 3 or 4 years.
I know.
And so, if let's just, for instance, say it's 3 or 4 years. How good is a Band-Aid approach?
The Band-Aid approach does bring the system into compliance to the post-78 level. So they are functioning systems. It's just they're not meeting the local regulations as we have them set forth.
Okay, so explain to me then what physically is a Band-Aid approach?
So, for example, if the trenches were to get clogged up, for an example like here, if a trench were to get clogged up because of a food grinder issue or something like that, you can abandon the trenches and put, for example, a pit or other trenches in the meantime so that the system is working. The D-box is still working. The septic tank is still working. It's just to make in this case, it would be making the soil absorption system functional.
So you have to put the new trenches in the 100% expansion area?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, as long as it's still functional in that area,
right.
As long as that whole area is not clogged.
Okay.
So it would bring it into compliance of the previous regulations, just not forcing people to do the IA and things like that, so that they don't have the undue burden of having to put a large capital outlay in anticipation of the sewer.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
we have approved a couple Band-Aids in the last few years.
We have.
Millie's is one of them. And a couple on Long Pond Drive, I think.
Okay, but here's where my problem lies. We just voted on someone that wanted a regular system, and the sewer, he didn't know when the sewer was going to come into his area. And we made him put in an IA
it's
system.
different. That's new construction.
In that case, it was one. The Moore's End case is new construction for one,
Right.
and then two, that lot specifically was actually just outside of the sewer district, so they were not part of the needs area.
Fine.
Yeah,
All right.
we're consistent.
And this is 238 Nantucket, if you would like to.
No, I think it's
Straight. Okay. So.
Okay, any comments?
No, I'm all right.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the ACO for 238 Nantucket.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. 44.
Okay, and the next one is 44 Arkansas Avenue. We're just gonna, so that we can collect the signatures so that we can record it. 44 Nantucket, same. Sorry.
I did the inspection on that, so I think I may recuse myself from this one.
Okay. The 44 Arkansas Avenue is the same situation. It's inside the needs area. They're actually probably Nantucket's closer. They're also in the needs area. They're looking to do a similar repair to bring them into compliance so that they can still use the home while they wait for the sewer system.
Comments?
No,
Questions?
I'm all right. I'm all set.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor of the ACO for 44 Arkansas?
Aye.
Yeah, aye.
Chairman votes aye. ACO is approved. You have to spell my name right.
Is it spelled out? I didn't realize.
Okay, what's next?
Director's report. Okay. So in your packet, you have the new tick-borne prevalence numbers that were provided to us by the hospital. Still an increase, obviously, because of the incidence. Sorry, not prevalence, incidence of tick-borne diseases. There has still been a slight increase. However, it's definitely slowed down. We've only seen about a 5% increase this month, as opposed to a 116% increase that we saw in August.
Yeah.
These numbers are still relatively high. There's 257 reported cases of tick-borne diseases from the hospital, and in that, we're still looking into the biases. Exactly. The bias is still there, mainly because sometimes they'll just see the bullseye and there's the pills and
Yep.
it's not reported. So these are definitely underreported. However, we're seeing a definite slowdown in the amount of new disease incidents. The second section in my report is actually very good news. We have received a go-ahead from the State Department of Public Health for the venison donation program. We received that phone call this morning.
Good.
We would be the first in the state to do something like this. It was on a funny note. The entire food protection program was on that phone call because no one has dealt with anything like this before. So it was a conference call with Michael Moore, Eric Gardner, Eric Hickey, Kim Foley, all the upper levels of food protection, because they're all very excited to see this. What they are offering is technical advising for this. What they are asking for us is a letter from the board, which we can put in on the next meeting, saying that yes, we are moving forward with this program, signed as a vote to say to them that the program is actually going to happen. But they are on board. And then the other good news is we received a phone call, what was it, 3 hours ago, from the food pantry saying that yes, they are on board as well. They can accept the refrigerator, they have the space, they can go. So we are.
So the anticipated start date is?
The anticipated start date is in December, I believe, right? The 2 weeks in December.
So we need to meet
In
with
December?
the funder.
That shotgun?
Yes. So
we need to publicize that, right?
Yes.
Well, let's just have our last funder meeting before everything is 100% done.
So the next step would be to get the processor and the food pantry together in the same room to discuss their personal logistics and the way things would go. And we also have to meet with the funder to make sure that they're still on board with everything.
The funder would need to know the cost.
And that's what the next meeting would be with the food.
So if you had that next meeting, then I would immediately after that let me know, and
absolutely,
I'll get the funder.
Absolutely.
Because hunting season is what, the first 2 weeks of December?
In December, yes.
Yeah.
And
so we have to really push that.
Exactly. So what we would do is I can also spend this next month as well developing outreach programs and other methods of getting this information disseminated so that we can hit the ground running.
Okay, I'll send a note to the funder to say that it's still moving forward, and I just want to make sure that the funder's like physically on island.
That's it.
You know.
That's an important logistics part.
It's important logistics. Okay, that sounds great.
And then the next part, I'm going to need some guidance from the board here. Over the past few months, I have been reading some of the regulations that have been put into place. There are some regulations that are out of date. Mainly the definitions regulation no longer is relevant to some of the IA systems. The bedroom definition to the regulation in Regulation 55, I believe it is. 50. Regulation 50, which is definitions regulation, has a few discrepancies that I would like to have cleaned up. We are grossly out of date on our fee schedule. I did a study of other towns in the state, both Cape Islands and out west, and the more urban areas, and we are definitely undercharging. So I would also request that we look at the fee regulations, the fee schedule. The fee schedule is actually a regulation, so we would have to open hearings for them. So if I can have a consensus from the board so that I can send a list of regulations, and then we can open it up for next hearing.
Work it through and, in a logical priority way, a regulation.
We could set it all up so that we can hear the regulations all at once, if that is.
Well, actually, that makes sense because a lot of regulations refer to other regulations.
Exactly.
So
we would have
64 refers to 50 and
69 and 55 and 50 exactly. So we would have to open them all at the same time so that we can clean up the language. Okay. So is that something we would move forward?
On your list.
Yep. Okay. And then on top of that, I think. Does the board have, the staff have anything else they would like to add? No? Other than that, we're moving forward. We've been fielding a lot of the phone calls from the letters that have been sent out for Regulation 64. People have a significant response.
Sure.
Well, I want to say I'm in the real estate business, so a couple of weeks ago, there was an article from a real estate broker in the thing about Article 64, and some of it was, kind of not true. So what I did was I went to your office and I got some other Article 64 printed out and went to his office and gave it to him and asked him to make sure that every real estate broker on the island, which is about 350 of them, somewhere around there, actually got the actual article and regulations so they would know how to talk to their people.
That's excellent.
Talk to their customers.
Thank you. That's excellent. Yeah, we need to. One of the things that we're looking for, this mailing was the first step of getting the information out there. We're currently working on the website so that we can also get the regulation out there. There's a Jason in the town administration office is looking to set up a water quality page where it refers to the well regulations, the Wanacomit Water Company, the septic systems, the estuaries reports, natural resources, Concom, so that everyone can have one-stop shopping as far as information goes, and we can get that information disseminated correctly. That's part of the issues I've been dealing with some of the phone calls. Anne's been dealing with it. Art, Kathy, they all deserve. I will buy them all lunch, on the record. Because it's been a blitz of phone calls on this information for people who have been misinformed, actually, in many cases. So we are working to move all this forward.
One of the things I recommend is the NARAB, which is Nantucket Real Estate Board. I think they should be on your mailing list for everything, not everything that's coming down the pipe, but everything that's been approved or regulations that you were just talking about are changing, because anything that would affect someone buying a piece of property or buying a house to redo it, and they can, if you see some of J. Pepper Frazier's ads or you listen to on the radio, they're already starting to tell people they're doing things. They're saying, listen, come to see us, we can help you with, you might be able to think you have 10 bedrooms, you can only have 3 bedrooms, and things like that. So they're starting to get educated, and they're starting to get aware of all the changes that the Board of Health is starting to make, because they have people that say, oh, I thought I could have this, and they're trying to tell them, you got to read the regulations now. You got to get the regulations and read them so you're informed. Just so so that's
I think we all worked hard on those regulations, but the mistake we made is we didn't. We had 3 public hearings, and we laughed about how no one came. Yeah. But we should have looked at that and said, you know what, we needed to do a better job of publicity.
Okay. It was covered in the paper.
It was.
They had a very detailed.
But here's the funny part of that. Like I had this real estate broker tell me that. He said, you guys are going to get a lot of pushback on this thing. And I said, why? And he said, you dropped this thing like a hammer on us. And I said, no, we didn't.
We didn't.
We had 6 or 8 months of public hearings, and I said, you know how many people came? And he said, how many? And I said, that many. I said, but you have a loose chicken and you couldn't fit another person in this room. And I
That's
said to
true.
him, and I just said to him, I said, you know, the trouble with the people in Nantucket, they don't come to a meeting unless it affects them immediately, and that's when they show
Right,
up.
well, that's
so
true.
I don't know how we can do a better job when we have public hearings. I mean, it's posted.
It's posted. So we should think about it, though. But you're true. We had a room full of animal lovers and no one for regulation that's going to affect a lot of people. Interesting. All
That's
right.
a good point.
Anything else?
Nope, I'm all set.
Well, hearing no objections, we will close the meeting.